Hello, it's Nadia, and this is She Builds Again. And I am here for another episode, and today I'm going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart, which is my faith. And honestly, I'm not here sitting on any kind of soapbox, acting like I have a perfect relationship with God, because it has been anything but. It's actually probably the worst, because it has been highs and lows. I have questioned, I have doubted, I have stepped away from my faith. But what I can say, at least for now, in this season, in this chapter, is that God has been drawing me closer to Him as I just went through so many challenges last year. And I found that I really did need Him. I needed to surrender. I needed to lean into my faith and believe in something bigger than myself and try to see the lessons in all of the hard things that we were dealing with last year. And so this channel, and so far I've been sharing about my journey relocating from Bermuda, which is our home country, to Bali, Indonesia. We moved here 3.5 years ago. I was 35 years old when I moved here with my family, my husband, our son, who was 3 at the time, and we've since welcomed our baby girl. And I can definitely say that I was so burnt out and so exhausted from everything that I was journeying through back home that I was in a place where my faith was at an all-time low. I just really was confused, to put it plainly. We still went to church occasionally, but I really struggled to feel like the Holy Spirit. I really struggled to feel connected to God. And the reality is that there is just so many different faiths and spiritualism here that I think that in itself got me thinking, maybe there are many different paths to God. And I still actually do believe that, and I still agree with that to some degree, to some extent. But I also realize that God, the God that I understand, that I learned about through my faith, through Christianity, is the God that continues to draw me closer to Him. I think I mentioned this in a video recently. It really took me realizing that in my head, I understand the beauty of all religions. I completely do. I respect and have reverence and a sense of awe and admiration for people that have any kind of relationship with something higher than themselves. But for me in particular, I do believe that I was born where I was born for a particular reason. I was raised with a grandma who took me to church for a specific reason. I was raised with a mom with strong faith for a reason. And God has always continued to draw me back to Him. So I'm not sharing this from any kind of sense of I know a lot about the Bible or that I know more than anyone else. I am literally starting from scratch. I have walked with God for, I would say, since I was in university more closely, but I've known Him since I was a child. And I've gone through ups and downs. I've stepped away multiple times. I have just unfortunately not been the best daughter, in all honesty, but I continue to see Him draw me closer to Him. And I am at a place where I just cannot fight it. I have to surrender. I have to just trust that His plan is best for my life. And so I've been walking on this journey of getting closer to God in 2026. And so far, I feel like He's been putting amazing people in my life. He's been putting me in contact with different Christian ministries and Christian groups that are here in Bali. And I feel like I am slowly but surely getting back onto a steady footing. And so that's exactly where I am right now. And so I wanted to share something a little different in this video. And I wanted to share a verse from the Bible and then talk to you about how I think it relates to my life here as a digital nomad, my life here as someone who has relocated with her family and is literally trusting God with all of the highs and lows that come with moving completely on the other side of the world from what you're used to, being in a different culture, a different language, having different customs and religions around you, but trusting God has you here for a reason and a season, and that I'm just going to walk that out with His hand holding mine. And so that's exactly where I am. I hope that you'll enjoy this video. Let me know in the comments if it makes any sense and if it resonates with you. I'd love to hear. So The verse that I'm going to be talking through, these questions through, is actually based on a verse from Genesis 12:1. And in that verse, it says, "The Lord had said to Abraham, 'Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you.'" And so I did a little search with ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to show me different verses from the Bible where people have relocated, where people have moved to different countries. And I just want to see how those verses apply to my situation here and the lessons that I've learned and the experience that I've had with my family. And so in this verse that I just read a few seconds ago, it was talking about how God had told Abraham to go from his country and his people and his father's household to the land that he will show them. And when I think about this verse and I meditate on this verse, the funny thing is that I was walking quite closely with God when I was still in Bermuda. It's a Christian country. It's a very traditional Christian country in a lot of respects. And I thankfully had a lot of support. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of people in my family and even our community group that were believers and strong believers and praying and interceding on our behalf. And for the longest time, I wanted to be like Abraham. I wanted to have a similar story to Abraham. I wanted God to make it so clear that I was supposed to go, when, where I was supposed to go, and what I was going to be doing, and how every single thing was going to work out and align itself. That's what I was hoping for. That's what I was praying for, maybe close to 10 years, actually. I had just, long story short, I'm going to share this story, but I had left my job. I was a journalist in Bermuda. I worked at a newspaper called the Royal Gazette, and I had gone through a really dark period in my life. I was depressed for sure because of many different things. I had gone through a breakup. I had just immersed myself into work, but the work was really pulling at me from an ethical point of view because I was covering all of these really dark things, and I was covering things that had to do with my tight-knit community, my small community. And as a Bermudian, it feels different when you're covering something like, for instance, a murder or a sexual assault or something of that nature, and you have to report on something and there's only a few degrees of separation from you and maybe the criminal, or maybe you and the victim. And so I had one case really early in my career. I think I was probably 23 or 24. And unfortunately, a girl that was very good friends with a lot of my close friends, I wasn't that close with her, but we were in the same group. We were from Bermuda, but we went to school in Toronto, and unfortunately she was murdered. And it was shocking and it was devastating, and it impacted so many of my close friends because, yeah, we were in this small group together at university. And I didn't directly cover her case, but I remember the reporter she was from England. She was sitting next to me in the cubicle next to me, and she was asking me these questions. She was asking me to call up the victim, my college friend's mom, and to do these things. And it was so conflicting because I didn't want to. I didn't want to give my colleague access to this person who meant something to me, this person in my community, her mother who was grieving. And so anyways, there were so many different ethical conflicts that I felt in this job, just by nature of it being such a small community. And even just a lot of the dark things that we were covering really weighed on my spirit, on my soul. And it just felt like I was just surrounded by negativity, and it really impacted my mindset. It impacted just how I was seeing the world and myself. And coupled with this, I was very stressed out. My skin was breaking out. I didn't want to be seen. There was just so much going on. Anyways, long story short, I ended up leaving that job because I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't care what I ended up doing. I just knew I could not be a news reporter in this particular newspaper, in this particular community. And I ended up going traveling. That was like my first real solo traveling experience. And so I went to Nepal for 2 months. I went to Thailand for a couple of weeks. I went to Singapore. My mom met me on the last leg of my trip which is like one of our little traditions that she would do with me. And it's funny because I had, just before I went on the trip, started to get closer to my faith again, because I had walked away in that dark season. I had felt really alone. I felt like God had betrayed me or disappointed me. And long story short, before I went on my trip, I had all of my one-way tickets booked. I wasn't sure if I was coming back. I wasn't sure what the plan was next, but I heard and felt in my spirit, and I don't know if it was just fear but I felt in my spirit God telling me that I wasn't going to be gone forever. I felt like just something very sure in me that like said I needed to be here in Bermuda. And so anyways, I went on that trip. I went for 3 months, maybe 4 months max. And then I was in Thailand and I was having such a good time. I was having so much fun. I was traveling, I was shopping. To this day, I love the shopping in Thailand better than anywhere else in the world. There was so much to see and do. There was just massages for super cheap. There was street food. There was just all these things that were amazing. Elephants and tigers and all of these great, amazing experiences. But while I was in Thailand, I was trying to think of what I was going to do to make money, right? Because I had some savings, but it's very easy, obviously, as if you're not making income, for that savings to just dwindle and go down. And I had messaged my boss at the newspaper that I worked at. I don't know what had happened, but my actual editor of the newspaper had unfortunately had a stroke. And because it's a very stressful job, he was a young guy, but he had a stroke. And then on top of that, I had messaged his second in command. And I was like, hey, you mentioned that I could have my job in a different section, because a job had opened up in a different section of the newspaper, which was the lifestyle section, which was completely different. It wasn't the negative news. It was the positive stuff, the culture, the arts, the human interest stories, that kind of thing. And because my boss wasn't even there, the person I had talked to get this role wasn't even there, I was just like, there's like 1% chance. There's very little chance that I'm going to be able to get it. This was like a very highly coveted section of the newspaper, because everyone wanted to be in lifestyle. Everyone wanted to do the fun stuff. Everyone wanted to have this role. And I had gone for just 4 months off gallivanting and traveling. But anyways, so I had found out about the heart attack from my editor. I had emailed his second in command, and he was like, yeah, your job's here waiting for you. Like, we have a spot for you in the lifestyle section. It's here when you come back. And I was like, okay, like, God, you're making it very clear you want me back in Bermuda. And so I went back to Bermuda, and there was a definite part of me that was like thinking, maybe I could just stay out here. Maybe I could, I don't know, study massage therapy or whatever. I just had no idea, but I loved it so much, but I knew that I was being called back home. And so I went back home to Bermuda. I think I worked in the lifestyle section for maybe 4 or so years before becoming an entrepreneur. But all that to say, I have definitely, in that case and in that scenario, I knew that God wanted me back in Bermuda. I knew that He didn't want me out traveling, and maybe I was too new of a believer to actually survive out there in terms of my faith. Maybe that's why He called me back. That's why at least I believe that He called me back to Bermuda. And so over the next 10 years, between 2012 and 2022, I literally moved to Bali in 2022. I was desiring to leave, praying to leave, talking to my friends about how much I wanted to leave. For some reason, every time I would spend a prolonged period in Bermuda, there would just be this feeling inside of me. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not happy here. All of these kinds of feelings of dissatisfaction in my environment. And I kept praying to God. I kept hoping that He would open a door. He didn't make it clear like an Abraham story. And I really wanted Him to. I wanted Him to just leave a note on my notebook before I woke up in the morning and opened my journal to say, hey, you're supposed to go to Bali. Hey, you're supposed to go to Dubai. Hey, you're supposed to go here. And in my head and in my heart, I wanted it all to be laid out. I wanted Him to prepare everything for it to be easy and smooth sailing. And that was not the case. The reality is, eventually, when I finally got my husband on board with the plan to relocate, that we weren't sure where we were supposed to go. We weren't sure if it would work out. We weren't sure what challenges we would come up against. And even when we were planning, for the most part, our relocation, it was during COVID. We had no idea what the world was even going to look like after COVID, because we weren't allowed to travel. We were given all these vaccinations. Like, things were just so crazy. A lot of countries were closing their borders. Some countries were opening their borders and having these digital nomad visas. And so we literally didn't know. But I think that what I've learned from that process is that it's not always clear. And sometimes you have to take a step before you actually know what everything is going to look like. And so what kind of brings me hope about this verse that I shared in Genesis 12:1, and I'm just going to share a summary of what I wrote down. But God asked Abraham to leave what was familiar without giving him the full plan up front. The direction came before the details. And so sometimes we know that we are not supposed to be in a specific environment. We can feel it in our bones. We can see it in our health. We can see how it impacts our mental health. We can feel ourselves wilting. We can feel ourselves and our light dimming. And I think that we have to, without the big sign, without all the clear details of what the plan is going to be, we have to trust that feeling, that knowing within ourselves that something is not right, that knowing within ourselves that our environment is not going to allow us to thrive, that it is slowly killing our dreams, our peace, our health. And so I think that is something that I have learned from my experience. Sometimes I wish I would have left a long time ago, and other times I realized that maybe I stayed where I was for a reason. After all, I met my husband in Bermuda. We had our son in Bermuda. Our son got to spend time with his family for the first 3 years of his life. And COVID happened. So we definitely couldn't have traveled in that time because it was just too crazy. But also, we were able to prepare. We were able to save. We were able to get on the same page as a couple, which I think is really important, because in the beginning, it was just me trying to drag my husband and force him to leave. I was sending him these articles. I'll share this in another video one day. But eventually it got to a point where he was also ready, where he also realized how important this move was for me and started to see how it could benefit him and benefit our life as a couple, as a family altogether. And so I'm taking heart from this verse. I'm taking heart that even though I haven't known all the details about our journey, I don't know how long we'll be here. I don't know all the challenges that are going to come up. I have no idea. But just continuing to walk step by step. And I'm so grateful and so glad that I've gotten back into a relationship with God in the last few months, in the last year, or slightly over a year, because honestly, I don't want to go through all of the trials that we have had to go through, all of the visa, immigration, finances, losing a stream of income for our family, all of these different tests, all these different trials. I don't want to do it on my own because it is heavy and sometimes it is hard. And the reality is that I'm also in a place where I am trying to trust and surrender, because I cannot control all of the things. I cannot control how long we'll be here. I cannot control that our family will continue to be healthy and happy and thriving in this environment. And so all that I can control is that I continue to trust in God, continue to surround myself by faith-based community, and continue to just have my eyes set on Him. My eyes just believing that He has me here for this particular season for a reason, and to trust where He's leading me, because I can see it. I can see the potential that's even within this YouTube channel. I can see the potential that could be birthed and the amazing ideas and dreams. And that's another thing I'll talk about in another video, how God has been speaking to me in dreams for the last, definitely the last 10 years or so for sure. And so I'll talk about that in another video, but it's just, I'm hopeful. And I'll leave this video with this last comment. I'm super hopeful because I am trusting that God has me right here for a reason, that God is gonna put the people that need to hear my message, put me in front of them, that God is going to open the right doors in His timing. And I'm hoping, because like I said, I am not perfect. I have been known to give up and walk away and not be consistent, but I'm just hoping that I can at least follow through with my end of the bargain and be faithful and show up and share my message and share my voice and overcome all the fears and worries of judgment or failure that are coming up as I go along this journey, and just trusting that what He could have for me might be so beautiful, might be even better than what I imagine. And so I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for listening to this video. If you liked it, let me know in the comments. If you have any questions about relocating and what it's like for a mom, a wife, a believer to relocate to a different side of the world. We are in Asia, but the great thing is it's 2026 and there are churches in pretty much every part of the world, at least most parts of the world. So if you like this video, let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Okay, bye for now.